Hello, my name is Victoria Fernandez, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about some of the things that I've been doing recently that have really been helping me with my anxiety and my OCD. So if you've been following me for a while, you know that I talk about all the things that my journey with being diagnosed with bipolar disorder and OCD, and kind of have handled different things and just kind of, my life. But today I wanted to specifically talk about anxiety because I know that this is something that affects a lot of people, and it's something that I've definitely battled with my whole life. From the moment that I was a very, very little girl, whenever I started having intrusive thoughts as like a 7-year-old, until adulthood, right? Going through school, going through university, at work, and in every step of life, there's been different things that have caused anxiety. But I think that little by little, through getting help, through talking about it, I've really come to a place where I have kind of learned how to take back my life, not let anxiety rule every single day of me and kind of ruin moments, because that's something that was really happening. And last year I really thought, okay, I've been able to make a lot of changes throughout my life. I'm so much better. I haven't had episodes in a long time, but intrusive thoughts, anxiety is still something that really affected my everyday life. So I started to, think about different ways that I could improve in that area. And then these are the 3 different ways that I've been doing it. So the first one is a no secret. I have talked about this over and over again. Therapy is really something that is a gift to humanity. Therapy is something that I believe not only people who experience mental illness, but just everybody should have at some point. Because in therapy, we learned tools, and I think that there are really life tools, ways to manage different scenarios in our lives, ways to manage our relationships. And I really feel like in all the years that I've been in therapy, I've really been able to learn so much more about myself. I've really been able to learn how to cope with a lot of, the struggles that I've faced, and it's really helped me become the person that I am today. So therapy, definitely something that has helped me along the way. I started, like, the first time I went to therapy, I was around 7 years old, and at the moment I was facing a lot of intrusive thoughts. The OCD really started to kick in at that age, and it did help. Of course, it came back later on. Mental health was a lot different that long ago. But then, when I turned 15, I started therapy again, and I've been on and off of it for a long time. But we'll talk about that in a different video. But basically, when it comes to anxiety, therapy is something that has given me a lot of different tools. Some of them kind of learning about my intrusive thoughts, understanding what they are. In therapy, I've started to learn that, whenever we have these awful scenarios or this anxiety, it's a lot of it is about kind of like noticing the thought, and then not engaging with it, right? Like just noticing it. And so, that sounds all easy and stuff, but it's so much harder to actually act upon it. It's so much harder to, be in a crisis, have a lot of thoughts that are super scary, and then say, oh, I'm just not going to pay attention to it. I'm just not going to engage with the thought. It's really hard. But when we start to put it into practice over and over again, it does help a ton. So going to therapy, I learned those tools. And then on the second thing was actually, acting on it, actually implementing the tools that I've learned in therapy into my life. So one of the tools that I really started to implement is that whenever I would have an intrusive thought, and to take a moment and explain what an intrusive thought is something that everybody experiences, but people who have it in a more clinical level, that's whenever you're diagnosed with OCD, or maybe there are other mental illnesses that have to do with it, but the one that I have specifically is OCD. And kind of an example is, you have a really scary bad thought, usually triggered by some type of anxiety. And that thought might be, if I don't turn on the turning signal, my car's gonna flip. And there's nothing going on in the moment that would make your car flip. It's just a very scary thought. And what happens after a scary thought is that your brain tells you to say a phrase, touch something. And there might be a bunch of other examples. But basically, when you take an action, it relieves your anxiety. It makes you feel like you're in control of the moment. And then, you can like move on. The problem is that every time that we engage with the thought, we kind of give on, we do the action, we have a bad thought, like the plane is going to crash. And then you say, well, if I say like, oh, may God forbid, or like you say something like that, or if you touch it this thing 3 times, then it won't happen. But the more that we act upon it, the worse that it gets. The monster just gets bigger and bigger because we're kind of like validating it. And by validating, what that means is that, again, we feel control. We feel that if we act upon something, if we, engage with the intrusive thought, it really won't happen. And the thing is that it's really hard because oftentimes those intrusive thoughts are really huge fears that we have. And sometimes they have to do with our family, like they will die, or like something bad will happen, or they have to do with our jobs, or like, all these things that we really care about. But something that really helped me this past month, like this past time since I've kind of implemented it, is letting go and saying, I simply don't care, which is so hard because, intrusive thoughts, again, they're really close to the heart. A lot of times, there's things that we care so much about and we're like, oh, we don't, like, we want to do everything so it doesn't happen. But I just started to say, I don't care. I have an intrusive thought about something awful. Like, it can be the most awful thing. And if you have OCD, you know that a lot of times, like, you don't even want to share these thoughts with anybody because they're so scary. And I'm really like, I don't care. And it's so uncomfortable. Like, I feel so uncomfortable in my body. But I started to cut the thought that way. And that's not to say that it didn't kind of continue. I just really had to be intentional. I had to be uncomfortable because like acting upon the intrusive thought, like doing the action it wants me to do makes me feel comfortable. But I had to be uncomfortable with the fact that I was not going to validate myself. I was not going to ask for that. Whenever, like, sometimes a way for validation that I would do is like I would tell my husband about like my intrusive thought, and he would tell me, oh no, like that won't happen, or you're not a bad person. And then I started telling him, like, don't validate me. If I tell you something, don't say anything. Like, I have to be okay with, I'm the worst person. I don't care. Like, and it's not that I don't care. I genuinely do. But I've come to understand that those thoughts are just thoughts. That, my body's trying to protect me, but it's not really being efficient by doing it, and it's just actually causing me more harm. So I have to be conscious of that in order for it to not affect me and kind of rule my life. Because what would happen is, like, I would spend whole weekends just thinking about this intrusive thought, like saying, oh my gosh, like this is the worst thing that's going to happen. I'm not going to be okay. Somebody's going to get harmed. And I couldn't function. And what was happening is that I was wasting precious time in my life focusing on something that, one, might never happen. Two, like sometimes were super ridiculous and it really, like, it made no sense. And so it was wasting my time, and I was so exhausted by it because it was exhausting, especially after like the time would pass, nothing would happen, and I'm like, wow, like really spent all that time just giving into these thoughts that weren't real, or like, if something bad does happen, it can be figured out, right? So I started training it, and I'm not saying that in today's world I don't have intrusive thoughts, because definitely not true. But I'm more intentional about how I deal with them. And I have to tell you guys, like, it's changed my life, like 100%. I have been so much better since I started doing that because, the monster got smaller. The monster doesn't have so much power over me. And that has allowed me to enjoy my life so much more and be more present in every moment. Lastly, something that also has helped a lot is reinforcing, like validating myself, but not in the way that we've been talking about it, but more so in a positive way. So for example, whenever I have an intrusive thought, I don't act on it. I'm very strong. Like, I'm able to conquer it. I'm like, hey, Vicky, great job. You did it. You've been doing really great. 3 months ago, this thought would have ruined your weekend. But today, you got it. Like, it didn't ruin you. You're still in the moment. You're still enjoying your life. And that's great. And what I'm doing there is that I'm like telling my brain like something positive. And I want to express here as well, like, how important are the things that we tell ourselves? How important are the things that we say out loud about ourselves and about other people as well? Because our brains sometimes, let me put it this way. I'm going to put an example. And I feel like I've talked about this example before. You get into an argument with someone. You had a really bad day. And after the argument, you're talking to your friends. You're like, yeah, I can't believe like this person did this. Like, I don't like them, like all this stuff. And if you notice, whenever you're retelling the story, probably over and over, like complaining about it during days, you start feeling that anger that you felt in the moment that it first happened. The problem with that is that your brain doesn't know, can't differentiate between the first time that it actually happened and the time that you're just telling it as a story. The problem is that you're going through the emotions over and over again that are negative, that are affecting your body. You know, you're spreading, like you're saying negative things, like it's just triggering you, and like you can feel it physically and mentally. So the things that we say, both positive and negative, have a huge impact in our minds. That's why we have to be really, really, really conscious about it, really intentional about the things that we say. Not to say that like you had a bad day, you can't talk about it. That's not it. I think it's mostly when we get stuck on it and we say it over and over again, we think about it, like we ruminate about it, and that's when it really is bad for our mental health. So those are the 3 things that I've been doing that have really been transforming my life. And you know, it's made a huge difference. Today, in today's world, I'm living more in the present, and I'm able to kind of start like cutting things off. I'm like, okay, we're not gonna think about it anymore. And again, it's not like it's perfect. It's not like I can like do it all the time. Like, you know, there are days that are harder than others, and that's okay. But I really do hope that me sharing this can help, can help you in some kind of way, because I know that anxiety is something that a lot of us face, and it can be really, really hard for us to detach from it. So if you like this video, please support. You know, if you're on YouTube, subscribe. If you're on Instagram, follow, like, share, and all that kind of stuff. And always remember that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and a bad day does not mean a bad life.